Hello, class. My name's Chris. I'm in your class, and I'm going to give a summary of Chapter 6, and I'm also going to talk about language itself. So, it's a funny thing to think of elementary school as being elementary, because it really isn't elementary at all. It's actually very profound and in some ways genius. Language is a phenomena that has never been understood and perhaps will never be understood properly by anyone. We can explain through evolutionary theory how we came about as a species, but we can't explain at all why we have language. We cannot understand or explain why we have language, where it came from. It's a phenomena. It's not understood by any scientist why we have language. And there's nothing really elementary about teaching a child how to read or write. We're teaching something that we don't even fully understand why it exists. So we're teaching phonemic awareness, and we're teaching phonological awareness, and we're using the scientific based research techniques, SBBR, and we're doing these things because we need to figure out how the young mind learns language. And we'll never really know for sure why language exists or how it came about. We can take shots in the dark at how we think children learn about language. So, it's interesting that in the textbook it's noted that phonological awareness comes before phonemic awareness. So what that means is that a child has to have some understanding of what a word sounds like before a child can understand the individual phonemes of a word. They have to have a rough idea of what the word canoe sounds like before they can separate it as canoe. There's a philosopher named Ludwig Wittgenstein. He's not covered in the textbook, but he was the Albert Einstein of philosophy in the 20th century, and he's off the radar for many people. But he basically tried to understand language and tried to understand how we use language and why we use language, and how the brain uses language, how the brain processes language. If you tell a child that you need 5 red apples, and so a child has to know what the color red is from a color sample. A child has to then connect the word red with that color. A child has to understand numbers, has to understand what 5 means, or at least they may never understand. Nobody understands really what 5 means, but they have to understand that the word 5 corresponds to the number 5, which means they need 5 apples that are also red, and they need to know what the fruit apple is, and they need to know how to pronounce the word apple. They need to know what that word means, what fruit it means. It means apple. So it's a very complicated thing, and so we're tasked with the task of teaching children how to read, and it's extremely complicated. And So I also wanted to talk about some of the ideas of the writing centers. Excuse me 1 second. I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So I kind of went over the ideas of phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, phonemic being the individual pieces of the words, the segments of the word. But I wanted to also talk about, just quickly, I also went over scientifically based instructional strategies, BBR, I believe it's called, or yes. That's scientifically based reading research. So teachers are now using scientifically based reading research, and combining that with emergent literacy strategies that we learned from the previous chapter, and then they're becoming smarter about how to teach children how to read. The final thing that I wanted to talk about was the Writing Center. So, from my experience as a child, the Writing Center was one of the most memorable parts of my childhood. In the essence of what paper was used to write my early, compositions in first and second grade. What pencils were used. The textbook does a really good job of explaining how a writing center should have many different kinds of paper, paper with lines, blank paper, paper with dots, and different kinds of pencils, not just fat pencils, skinny pencils, different kinds of writing utensils, markers, pens, whatever, and other forms of paper like cards, 3x5 cards, index cards, scissors, tape, stapler. These are the items of the Writing Center. They have to be well stocked so the child is able to create their work. So when a child does learn to read, as our ancestors did, and as they did cave paintings, so our children now are producing written texts that we are publishing, and we're letting them know that their words are important because we publish them and we hang them outside of the classroom, and it's on a written document they can show their parents, and they can write their own words and their own stories that are read and corrected and understood and discussed by the teacher with the students. So publishing is such an underrated form of teaching literacy and teaching reading and writing, because it places at a very high importance on the published material. So I think that I pretty much covered much of the chapter and what I took from it, and I tried to explain the phenomena of language as it relates to teaching children how to read and write, and how it's really not elementary. It's really a profound experience and important, nuanced form of instructional teaching. So thank you for your time. Bye.